The world knows Bruce Lee. The world knows Jackie Chan. The world knows Jet Li and Donnie Yen. But there are warriors who trained just as hard, fought just as fiercely, and appeared in films just as thrilling, yet somehow the world passed them by. Today on ZTV Mindset, we are telling the story of one of those warriors, a man born between two worlds, trained in the fighting arts from childhood, who walked into the heart of Hong Kong cinema and made his mark with his fists, his feet, and his absolute refusal to do anything halfway. This is the story of Andy On, and after today, you will never forget his name. Andy On Chi Kit was born on September 14, 1977 in Hong Kong, but he grew up in Canada, where his family moved when he was still a child. Growing up as a Chinese kid in Canada in the 1980s was not always easy. You existed between cultures. You had to know who you were and where you came from. And for Andy On, the answer to both of those questions was found in martial arts. He began training in Kung Fu at a young age, and it became the central force of his life. Not a hobby, not a pastime, a calling. He threw himself into training with the kind of dedication that separates the truly great from everyone else. By the time he was a young man, Andy On had built a physical and technical foundation that very few people outside of professional training academies ever achieve. His skills covered multiple disciplines. He was fast, powerful, precise, and creative in the way he moved and fought. And he had something else that no amount of training can give you. He had presence. When Andy On walked into a room or stepped in front of a camera, people noticed. In 2001, he moved to Hong Kong to pursue a career in cinema. This was a bold decision. Hong Kong action cinema already had its gods. Jackie Chan was a living legend. Sammo Hung was untouchable. Jet Li had conquered Hollywood. The bar was not just high. It was almost unreachable. But Andy On did not come to Hong Kong to be second to anyone. He came to work, and work he did. His early roles gave Hong Kong audiences a taste of what he could do. But it was in 2004 that he got his first major international moment. New Police Story. Directed by Benny Chan and starring Jackie Chan in one of his most serious and emotionally raw performances, New Police Story was a completely different kind of Jackie Chan film. Dark, gritty, painful, and it needed a villain worthy of standing against one of the greatest action stars who ever lived. They chose Andy On. His performance in New Police Story as the psychotic gang leader, Joe, was electrifying. He played a young man who had grown up worshipping cops and then turned against everything they stood for. His physicality was explosive. His screen presence was magnetic, and he went toe-to-toe with Jackie Chan in fight sequences that had audiences sitting forward in their seats. He was terrifying, he was compelling, and he made every single scene he was in impossible to look away from. New Police Story was seen by millions across Asia and by action fans worldwide. For many international viewers, it was the first time they ever heard the name Andy On. But Andy On was just getting started. In 2006 came Fatal Contact, and this film showed the world a completely different side of him. Fatal Contact is a serious, grounded, and emotionally complex martial arts film about an elite wushu performer who gets drawn into the brutal world of underground street fighting in Hong Kong. Andy On carried the entire film on his shoulders as the lead. This was not a supporting villain role. This was his movie, his story, his fight. The fight sequences in Fatal Contact are extraordinary. They are raw and fast and punishing in a way that feels completely real. That is because Andy On's martial arts foundation is completely real. He did not pretend to be a fighter. He is a fighter, and the camera knew it. Every strike, every throw, every brutal exchange of blows in that film lands with a weight and authenticity that only comes from someone who genuinely knows how to fight. Fatal Contact earned Andy On massive respect within the Hong Kong film industry and among serious martial arts cinema fans around the world. He followed this with a series of strong action roles across Hong Kong and Chinese cinema throughout the late 2000s and into the 2010s. In Black Mask 2, City of Masks, he took on a wildly physical and stylized role that showed his versatility as a performer. In The Bodyguard and Assassins, he appeared alongside a legendary ensemble cast including Donnie Yen, Sammo Hung, and Simon Yam, holding his own in every scene. In Connected, he again demonstrated that he could operate comfortably alongside the biggest names in the business. What makes Andy Yeon's career story compelling is not just the films he made, but the context in which he made them. He came up at a time when Hong Kong action cinema was in transition. The golden era of Shaw Brothers and Golden Harvest was long over. The genre was adapting, experimenting, trying to find its identity in a new century. Andy Yeon was one of the performers who helped bridge the gap between the old-school physical discipline of traditional kung fu cinema and the more modern, harder-hitting style of action films that audiences were starting to demand. He also brought something culturally unique to the screen. He was Chinese in heritage but Canadian in upbringing. He understood both worlds. He could communicate with international audiences in a way that purely Hong Kong-raised performers sometimes could not. He had a global perspective and a global ambition, and in a film industry that was increasingly looking toward Hollywood and toward international co-productions, that made him a valuable and interesting presence. His physical conditioning throughout his career has been nothing short of remarkable. At any point in his filmography, you can see a man who has never stopped training. The muscle structure is real. The speed is real. The technique is real. These are not gym muscles built for photographs. This is a fighting body built for actual combat over decades of serious training. In an era when more and more action stars rely on CGI, camera tricks and editing to simulate fighting ability, Andy Yeon was always the real thing. In more recent years, Andy Yeon has continued to work across Chinese and Hong Kong cinema, while also expanding into streaming productions and international projects. He has appeared in productions reaching audiences across Asia and beyond. The industry knows what he is. The directors who have worked with him know what he brings to a film. Every action choreographer who has worked alongside him knows that when Andy Yeon is on set, the fight scenes are going to be authentic. But here is the truth that his story teaches us. Talent is not enough. Hard work is not enough. Even genuine world-class skill is not enough. The entertainment industry is a machine of timing, luck, visibility, and circumstance. Bruce Lee happened to arrive at exactly the right moment, when the world was hungry for exactly what he represented. Jackie Chan built his brand across decades of relentless exposure and commercial crossover success. Jet Li had the right roles at the right time in the right films. And for reasons that have nothing to do with ability, Andy Yeon never quite got that perfectly timed perfect role that catapulted him into the global consciousness the way those names did. But here is what we know. His work exists. Fatal Contact exists. New Police Story exists. Every film he made exists permanently in the record of martial arts cinema. And the people who care about this genre, the people who go deeper than the biggest names and the most famous faces, those people know Andy Yeon. They have always known him. And they will tell you with complete confidence that this man is the real thing. The martial arts world is full of people who train in secret, full of warriors who carry their skill quietly through life without the spotlight ever finding them. Andy Yeon got closer to that spotlight than most. He made films that will be watched for decades. He gave performances that impressed the greatest names in his field. He fought alongside Jackie Chan and stood in the same frame as Donnie Yen and Sammo Hung, and held his ground. That is not nothing. That is not failure. That is a life devoted to a craft at the highest possible level. And on ZTV Mindset, we believe that deserves to be celebrated. The lesson from Andy Yeon's story is one that applies to all of us. You do not need the whole world to know your name to have lived a life of excellence. You do not need millions of fans to validate the hours you put in before sunrise when nobody was watching. Real mastery is its own reward. The training is its own reward. Showing up every single day and doing the work at the highest level you are capable of. That is the standard. That is the mindset. Andy Yeon set that standard. He lived it. He still lives it. And whether the world's cameras are pointed at him or not, the man is still standing, still training, still the real thing. Give this video a like if you respect the grind. Subscribe to ZTV Mindset for more stories of warriors, legends, and mindset. And drop Andy Yeon's name in the comments so that every person who watches this video leaves knowing who he is. He deserved better from Hollywood. But his legacy in Kung Fu cinema is already written. Permanent undefeated Andy On, remember the name.